Imagine for a moment that every prayer you've spoken, every affirmation you've made, and every dream you've held close was met by a quiet, unseen resistance. It isn't loud enough to stop you outright, but just enough to slow you, to blur the edges of what once felt clear. That subtle resistance, that unspoken hesitation, is not the world denying you. It is the silent saboteur within your own mind. It does not argue, it whispers. It questions softly. Are you sure you deserve this? What if you fail again? What if it never works? Its voice feels like your own, but it is older, formed from the echoes of fear, memory, and misunderstanding. This voice doesn't mean harm. It believes it is protecting you, but in trying to keep you safe, it closes the gates to divine flow, the natural current of life that moves through every open mind and willing heart. Divine flow is not a reward, it is the original state of consciousness. When you are aligned with truth, ideas come easily, love expands, and creation happens without effort. But doubt, especially the kind hidden in the unconscious, creates a vibration that resists that flow. It slows energy, it clouds intuition, and it convinces you that divine timing has failed you. Yet the truth is simpler. It was never the universe that withheld. It was the mind that could not yet receive. You see, the human mind is both receiver and transmitter of divine intelligence. When it is clear, light moves freely through it. When it is clouded by fear, the light bends, refracts, and breaks into confusion. That confusion is not a punishment. It is a signal that the inner field has become divided. The conscious mind says yes, while the unconscious quietly says no. Creation responds not to words, but to the harmony or conflict between those two voices. To see this clearly is the beginning of liberation. You do not need to fight your doubt, because doubt is not your enemy. It is a fragment of your own power that has forgotten its origin. Once illuminated, it dissolves back into the flow that it once resisted. Awareness alone begins the healing, because awareness is light, and light never battles darkness. It simply reveals it. Now, let us turn inward to meet the silent saboteur face to face, and to remember how to open the gates of divine flow once more. It begins quietly. As a thought so subtle you barely notice it, you feel inspired, ready to act on an idea, and then a small hesitation flickers across your mind. It feels practical, even reasonable. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I'm not prepared. Maybe I should wait. But underneath those rational tones lies the deeper vibration of disbelief. Doubt rarely announces itself as doubt. It hides behind logic, humility, or caution. It appears as wisdom, yet it is only fear wearing a convincing disguise. This silent voice has been with you for years. It speaks through inherited patterns, through the memories of old disappointments, through every time your faith was shaken and never quite restored. Its goal is not to destroy you, but to preserve what it thinks is safe. To the unconscious, change feels dangerous, even when that change leads to expansion. So it whispers familiar limitations to keep you within known boundaries. The tragedy is that those boundaries were never real. They were imagined into place by thoughts repeated long enough to become walls. Each wall was built by an interpretation, a moment when something went wrong, and the mind quietly concluded, I must protect myself from this ever happening again. That conclusion became belief, and belief became law. The silent saboteur doesn't operate through your conscious intent. It moves through reflex. It shapes perception before you even realize it. You can feel its hand in the small deflations of energy after inspiration, the way a surge of excitement is quickly followed by fatigue or second-guessing. It's not that your spirit loses strength, it's that energy begins to pull in two directions. One part moves forward with trust, while the other retreats in fear. When you begin to notice this tension, something remarkable happens. Awareness opens a gap between you and the voice. You start to realize that you are not the doubt itself, you are the one hearing it. This moment of recognition is the first crack in the illusion of power the saboteur holds. For the voice loses strength the instant you stop identifying with it. To live in divine flow requires that this recognition deepen. You must learn to discern which voice speaks from truth and which from memory. The voice of truth will always expand you. It will feel light, warm, and alive. The voice of the saboteur will contract you. It will feel heavy, uncertain, and small. Your task is not to suppress the latter, but to bring it into awareness. For in awareness, even the most stubborn shadow begins to transform. As you continue to listen, you will begin to sense a pattern in how this voice moves. It doesn't only question your worth, it manipulates energy at the very level of thought. And that is where our exploration leads next into the hidden mechanics of how the mind itself blocks divine flow. Once you begin to hear the silent voice of doubt, you start to see that it is not a random visitor in your mind. It follows patterns. It repeats phrases. It moves through memory and expectation like wind through tall grass, subtle, but persistent. What you feel as hesitation is the result of invisible circuitry built long ago. Doubt isn't created in the moment, it is activated. Each time life presents a possibility greater than what you believe you can receive, those circuits come alive. Your mind is a magnificent instrument, capable of receiving infinite inspiration from divine intelligence. But when misaligned, that same instrument becomes a barrier. The energy of creation enters through thought, flows through emotion, and then manifests in form. If there is conflict at any point in the sequence, if belief contradicts desire, or emotion resists vision, the flow becomes distorted. You may continue to affirm good, yet unconsciously prepare for disappointment. This is the subtle mechanics of interference. The conscious mind desires abundance, harmony, success. The subconscious remembers rejection, loss, and failure. The two frequencies meet and cancel. Energy that should have moved freely toward creation becomes static, looping endlessly in thought without finding expression. This is why so many dreams seem just beyond reach, not because the universe denies them, but because the signal leaving the mind is divided. It is not enough to think positively while fear remains unacknowledged. Suppressed emotion becomes energetic weight. The subconscious does not respond to words, it responds to vibration. Every thought carries an emotional signature, and that signature determines its creative power. If your affirmations carry even a trace of doubt, the vibration is mixed. The universe mirrors that mixture perfectly, returning a reality that feels uncertain, inconsistent, or incomplete. To restore flow, you must first understand how thought, emotion, and belief interact. Thought gives direction, emotion gives energy, belief gives permission. When they are aligned, creation is instantaneous. When they are divided, effort replaces flow. The human being begins to strive instead of allow, to push instead of receive. And the more one pushes, the tighter the resistance becomes. This is the paradox of the mind. The harder you try to force alignment, the more you affirm its absence. Doubt thrives in that effort. It feeds on strain, on trying, on the subtle fear that says, if I don't hold it together, everything will fall apart. The silent saboteur is not strengthened by challenge, it is strengthened by control. It hides in the impulse to manage what should be trusted, to analyze what should be allowed. As you notice these patterns, awareness begins to soften them. Every time you observe a thought without judgment, the circuit loses energy. The flow of divine intelligence starts to trickle through again. You might feel sudden calmness, or a sense of clarity that doesn't come from reasoning. This is not imagination, it is the mind releasing its own interference. But the deeper layer of this pattern lies beneath logic itself. Doubt uses the intellect as a mask, presenting fear as reason. It sounds like intelligence, but its root is emotional, not rational. To move beyond the interference, you must learn to see how fear dresses itself as logic, convincing you to mistrust what your spirit already knows. That is where our journey continues into the subtle disguise that keeps divine power veiled behind the mask of reason. Doubt does not always sound like fear. Most of the time, it sounds like reason. It takes on the calm tone of logic, dressing itself in the language of intelligence. It will tell you that you are being realistic, responsible, grounded. Yet, if you listen closely, that logic carries a subtle tension, a contraction that feels like safety but hides avoidance. It is not the clarity of truth you are hearing, it is fear disguised as wisdom. This is one of the most deceptive moves of the Silent Saboteur. It understands that the conscious mind respects intellect, so it hides beneath it. It argues its case with convincing precision. Don't take the risk. Don't trust your intuition. Don't reach too far, think it through. It sounds protective, even loving. But if you feel the vibration underneath, it is not peace that logic brings. It is delay. The energy of divine flow always feels alive, while the energy of unconscious doubt feels heavy, muted, and cautious. You can sense it when inspiration arises. Something within you lights up an idea, an impulse, a creative direction. For a brief moment, the divine flow moves unhindered, but almost immediately, another thought appears to keep you grounded. It tells you to wait until conditions are perfect, until you have proof, until you know exactly how it will turn out. The delay seems rational, but what it truly expresses is a lack of trust in the intelligence that gave the inspiration in the first place. Logic, when aligned with divine flow, serves as a bridge between idea and form. But when ruled by fear, it becomes a gatekeeper that locks truth outside. The intellect was never meant to be your master. It was meant to be your servant, the tool that gives structure to what spirit reveals. When intellect tries to lead, it cannot see beyond what it already knows, and so it endlessly recycles the past. Divine intelligence, however, creates from the unseen. It requires faith, not certainty. The problem is not logic itself, it is identification with it. The mind believes that by analyzing enough, it can control reality. Yet control is the language of fear, not understanding. True clarity arises not from constant evaluation, but from alignment with inner knowing. There is a difference between thinking and seeing. Thinking dissects, seeing recognizes. Thinking argues, seeing understands. Thinking doubts, seeing knows. When you begin to feel the difference, awareness expands beyond reasoning. You realize that logic can describe truth, but it cannot produce it. The energy that animates your deepest insight does not come from intellect. It comes from the stillness beneath it. That stillness is not emptiness, it is divine awareness, waiting to flow through an undivided mind. As you rest more deeply in that awareness, logic begins to purify. It no longer serves the saboteur, but becomes a channel for inspiration. Thought becomes coherent, language clear, and ideas strong not from effort, but from alignment You stop arguing with yourself because there is nothing left to defend. And in that harmony, another truth reveals itself. Belief is not just a thought you repeat. It is energy vibrating through every level of your being. When logic yields to faith, belief regains its creative power. The next step in this journey, then, is to understand the subtle energy of belief, how it determines the rhythm of divine flow itself. When logic finally loosens its grip, something softer begins to move beneath thought, an unseen current that gives every idea its life. That current is belief. It is invisible, visible, but it shapes everything you experience. Belief is not what you say you accept. It is what your energy continually confirms. It is the vibration you live from, not the words you speak. Many people think belief is built through repetition, but repetition alone cannot create faith. You can say, "I am abundant," 1,000 times. Yet if your inner vibration still whispers, "I am not enough," the universe will respond to that deeper signal. Belief operates like an energetic frequency. It communicates what you truly know, not what you wish to know. Divine flow follows resonance, not rhetoric. Every thought is a signal, and every emotion amplifies or weakens that signal. When you believe in your worth, your energy expands. The field around you becomes coherent, clear, inviting. Life begins to organize itself in harmony with that vibration. When you doubt, your energy contracts, scattering attention and breaking rhythm. It's not that the divine flow leaves you, it's that your channel becomes narrow, unable to receive what is already being offered. To understand belief, you must see that it exists beyond thought. Belief is not mental, it is experiential. It lives in the body, in the feeling tone of consciousness. The moment you truly believe something, you feel it, a subtle warmth, a calm certainty, a quiet knowing. You stop hoping and start allowing. That sensation is the alignment of your energy with divine truth. You are no longer asking life to prove itself. You're simply resonating with what is already real. Unconscious doubt, however, lives in the same energetic space. It doesn't declare itself openly. It hides in the emotional residue of past experiences. It might sound like, "I've tried before," or "things like that don't work for me." Each memory carries an energetic imprint, and that imprint vibrates until it is consciously reinterpreted. Healing, then, is not about creating new beliefs, but about releasing the charge from old ones. You cannot force yourself to believe through willpower. True belief arises naturally when resistance dissolves. When you see doubt for what it is, not truth, but tension, the mind relaxes, and belief returns on its own. It was never gone, it was buried beneath fear. The process of spiritual growth is not about acquiring faith, but uncovering it. Belief is the natural state of an undivided mind. To re-establish divine flow, you must align thought, emotion, and energy. Thought gives direction. Emotion supplies power. Belief determines whether that power can move. When these three resonate as one, creation becomes effortless. This is the inner architecture of manifestation, not attraction through desire, but expression through knowing. The Christ-conscious mind does not command reality, it reveals it. The more you sense the texture of belief within yourself, the more sensitive you become to its quality. You can feel the subtle shift when you move from forced positivity into genuine trust. It is like the difference between pretending to smile and being overtaken by joy. The former is tension wearing optimism, the latter is alignment without effort. And as this awareness grows, another presence begins to emerge. The quiet observer behind all thought. the one who can sense belief without being entangled in it. This is the inner witness, the consciousness that sees both faith and fear, but is neither. It is from that space that all transformation begins, and it is there our journey turns next. There comes a point in every inner journey where awareness begins to turn back upon itself. You've studied the patterns of doubt, recognized its disguise as logic, and sensed the vibration of belief beneath it all. But the true transformation begins when you realize that you are not the thoughts that rise and fall within you. You are the one who sees them. This shift marks the birth of the inner witness, the part of consciousness that observes the movement of the mind without becoming trapped in its tides. The witness is not born through effort. It emerges in stillness when you stop trying to control your thoughts and instead begin to notice them. You start to see doubt, fear, and resistance as phenomena passing through awareness rather than truths that define you. For the first time, you experience the distance between you and your thinking. That distance is freedom, a sacred space where divine intelligence can re-enter the mind's field. The silent saboteur survives on identification. It convinces you that its voice is your own, that its fears are your reality. But when the witness awakens, the illusion breaks. You hear the inner dialogue and recognize, this is not me. This is a pattern. Awareness, once directed outward toward the world, now illuminates the inner landscape. It sees thought not as authority but as movement. You begin to watch your mind like you might watch clouds drift across the sky, shifting, dissolving, reforming, yet never touching the vastness above them. In this recognition, something subtle begins to happen. The emotional charge of thought lessens. What once pulled you into reaction now invites curiosity. Even difficult emotions, anger, anxiety, guilt lose their density when seen clearly. The light of awareness transforms what it touches. You do not have to fix or fight the thought. Simply seeing it breaks its continuity. This is not avoidance, it is transcendence through understanding. The inner witness does not judge the saboteur, it understands it. It recognizes that doubt is not malice but memory, the residue of past fear that has not yet met the warmth of compassion. From the vantage point of the witness, you begin to see the entire architecture of your mind as a living system, seeking harmony. There are no enemies here, only aspects of self waiting to be reintegrated into wholeness. As the witness strengthens, you start to experience an entirely different quality of awareness. You can act and think while remaining rooted in stillness. The noise of the mind may continue, but it no longer controls your rhythm. You begin to sense a silent intelligence flowing beneath thought, an energy that guides rather than instructs. It is the same intelligence that moves tides, heals wounds, and gives order to stars. It is divine consciousness, observing itself through you. From this place of steady awareness, transformation becomes effortless. The more you see, the less you struggle. Awareness dissolves resistance. The way light dissolves darkness, not by confrontation, but by inclusion. Every thought, even the doubtful ones, becomes material for illumination. Nothing needs to be rejected. Everything can be understood. As this seeing deepens, you realize that even doubt itself can be transformed. The witness does not destroy the saboteur, it reclaims it. Energy that once worked against you begins to work for you. What was once fear becomes fuel for awakening. This is how transformation begins, not through force, but through the alchemy of awareness. And it is from this new state of seeing that the next movement of the soul begins, the art of turning that awareness into power, of transmuting doubt into light. where every fragment of fear becomes part of the flow it once blocked. When the inner witness becomes steady, it shines like a lamp in the center of the mind. Its light does not fight darkness, it reveals it. This is where transformation truly begins. Every fragment of doubt that once felt like opposition now becomes material for illumination. The mind no longer divides itself into positive and negative, faith and fear. It begins to understand that every current of energy, even doubt itself, is simply consciousness seeking to return to its original harmony. To transmute doubt into light, you must first stop resisting it. Resistance feeds the very thing you wish to dissolve. When you push against fear, you confirm its power. But when you turn toward it with awareness, you change the frequency of the encounter. You are no longer reacting, you are witnessing. And in that witnessing, energy starts to shift. Doubt cannot survive in the same space where understanding resides. It unravels the moment it is seen for what it is. Misdirected faith. Because doubt and faith are not opposites. They are the same energy, vibrating at different frequencies. Doubt is faith inverted. It is the creative power of belief turned toward limitation instead of possibility. Once you recognize this, you stop trying to get rid of doubt and begin to reclaim it. Every time you feel uncertainty, you are feeling the raw power of belief waiting to be reoriented. The energy is already there. It only needs redirection. Transformation happens through awareness, compassion, and inclusion. You meet the doubting thought not as an enemy, but as a messenger. You let it speak. You listen to the fear behind it, not to agree, but to understand. When you allow the emotion to rise without resistance, its intensity dissolves. The mind stops struggling. The heart opens, and through that openness, divine light flows where it was once blocked. It is a gentle alchemy. You are not replacing darkness with light. You are realizing they were never separate. The shadow was simply light misunderstood. Every doubt you transmute adds to your strength. The energy that once fractured your focus becomes fuel for greater clarity. Like metal purified by fire, consciousness refines itself in the presence of awareness. As this process deepens, your relationship with experience changes. You no longer fear the recurrence of old emotions. When they arise, you see them as echoes of energy asking for reconciliation. What used to pull you down now reminds you to open. What used to drain you now energizes you. Doubt, seen clearly, transforms into a signal that awareness is expanding. This is the true meaning of inner power, not the absence of fear, but the ability to transform it. Power is not domination over the mind. It is cooperation with its healing. Each time you transmute doubt into light, you reclaim a part of your creative essence. Your inner field becomes clearer, brighter, more coherent. Thought, emotion, and energy begin to move in rhythm again. And when this rhythm stabilizes, the once divided self begins to harmonize. The mind no longer works against the spirit, but with it. Intellect becomes the servant of intuition. Reasoning becomes a vessel for revelation. The next stage of awakening unfolds naturally, the alignment of mind and spirit, where divine intelligence and human awareness move as one current of creative flow. When the mind and the spirit begin to move in harmony, life takes on a new rhythm. Thought no longer runs ahead of the heart, and the heart no longer moves without direction. The intellect becomes the instrument through which divine intelligence expresses, while the soul becomes the guiding force that breathes purpose into every idea. Alignment is not something you build, it is something you remember. It is the natural state of consciousness when resistance dissolves. The mind is an extraordinary tool, but it was never meant to lead alone. When isolated, it analyzes endlessly, dividing life into fragments. Spirit, however, sees wholeness. It perceives without judgment and moves without fear. The alignment of the two is what allows thought to become luminous, to think clearly without losing compassion, to act powerfully without severing peace. This alignment begins through surrender, not submission. You are not yielding your intellect, you are refining it. When the mind recognizes that it is not the source of wisdom, but the channel through which wisdom flows, humility arises, not weakness, but spaciousness. The mind relaxes into service, allowing the higher intelligence to guide its direction. In that moment, every decision feels lighter, more natural, as if you are remembering the rhythm of an ancient music that was always playing beneath the noise. You can feel this harmony when it happens. The body softens, the breath evens out, thought slows without effort. In this state, intuition and logic no longer argue, they dance. Intuition brings the vision, logic builds the bridge. The two work together as heaven and earth, invisible and visible, vibration and structure. When they unite, divine flow manifests as effortless creation. To live this way requires trust, trust in the intelligence that animates you, trust that what arises from stillness is wiser than what is forced by control. Doubt may still appear, but it no longer commands attention. You begin to recognize it as the echo of an old pattern, not the voice of truth. The mind learns to bow to the heart, not out of hierarchy, but out of remembrance. The heart was always the true center of knowing. As alignment deepens, even choice begins to feel different. Decisions no longer come from calculation, but from recognition. You simply know when something resonates and when it doesn't. The need to overthink fades because thought has returned to its rightful place, an instrument tuned to the melody of spirit. In this harmony, creation becomes sacred play. Work feels lighter, relationships flow more easily, and challenges lose their weight. You no longer struggle to make things happen. You participate in their unfolding. Divine intelligence orchestrates the rhythm, and you move in time with it. You are not the conductor, you are the music being played. And as you live in that rhythm, another invitation arises. The mind that once sought control now discovers freedom in letting go. The next phase of awakening is to release the final attachment, the need to manage life's flow and allow divine order to lead entirely. From alignment, you are called toward surrender, into the art of releasing the need for control and trusting the current of the infinite. As alignment between mind and spirit grows, a new awareness begins to rise quietly within you, the realization that control was never the same as safety. Control is the reflex of a mind that has forgotten its connection to divine intelligence. It believes it must force outcomes, guard against uncertainty, and shape the world through effort alone. But what it calls mastery is often tension. The need to manage every detail is the last disguise of fear. True power, paradoxically, comes through release. To let go is not to abandon responsibility. It is to return responsibility to its rightful source. You begin to understand that life flows with or without your constant supervision. The divine current does not need your control, only your cooperation. When you stop gripping the edges of reality, you discover that the river of creation carries you farther, faster, and with more grace than all your struggling ever could. Surrender, in this sense, is not passive. It is participation without resistance. It is saying yes to what is unfolding, even when the form is not yet clear. To the unawakened mind, surrender feels like loss of power. To the awakened mind, it is the restoration of it, Because the moment you stop trying to manipulate life, the greater intelligence that moves through all things can finally act without obstruction. You may feel this surrender in small moments. First, a decision not to argue, a choice to trust timing rather than demand it. Gradually, it expands into the larger dimensions of your life. You stop trying to control how others perceive you. You release the need to prove your worth. You notice that effort becomes replaced by flow and tension by ease. Everything still gets done, but it happens through you, not by you. Letting go requires faith in unseen order. The human mind wants linear cause and effect. Divine intelligence moves in spirals. It knows how to weave what you call mistakes into miracles. When you surrender control, you allow this higher orchestration to reveal itself. You no longer see delays as punishment or confusion as failure. You recognize them as timing perfect, precise, and kind. The need for control dissolves as trust deepens. Trust is not blind, it is visionary. It does not ignore reality, it sees more of it. To trust life is to acknowledge that you are not separate from the intelligence that creates galaxies and opens flowers. You are part of that same rhythm, that same design. Control isolates, trust connects. Control closes the heart, trust opens it. And when the heart opens, something magnificent happens. The divine flow that seemed blocked begins to move again. The same situations that once felt resistant start to unfold with elegance. Opportunities align, synchronicities multiply, and you begin to sense that life itself is aware of you, responding to your openness. You realize that everything you once tried to make happen was already trying to find its way to you. It only needed you to stop interfering. From this surrender, a quiet confidence emerges, not the confidence of ego, but of alignment. You no longer need to predict or control, because you are living from the knowing that whatever unfolds will serve your highest good. You begin to live not from effort, but from flow, not from fear of what might go wrong, but from faith in what is always right. And from this freedom, a new way of being arises. A life guided not by striving, but by certainty and inner stability that does not depend on external conditions. This is the dawning of living from inner certainty, where you no longer chase divine flow. You are divine flow in motion. One surrender has loosened your grip, and alignment has settled into your bones. Something quiet and unshakable begins to arise. It is not bravado or temporary optimism. It is a steadiness that feels like an inner lighthouse. A simple knowing that does not depend on external applause or tidy outcomes. You begin to act from that place, rather than from a place of reaction. Decisions feel less like wagers and more like recognitions. You do not push, you respond. You do not prove, you reveal. This way of living is practical as well as mystical. It shows up in small, mundane choices as much as in grand life turns. You notice how your day rearranges itself when you no longer make decisions from anxiety. A difficult conversation is approached with clarity instead of defensiveness. A project that once felt overwhelming opens into manageable steps because your attention rests in purpose rather than panic. Even your energy budget changes. You spend less time patching leaks and more time directing light where it matters. The world becomes less noisy because you have become quieter. Inner certainty also rewrites your relationship with failure. When doubt ruled, missteps felt like indictments. Now they appear as useful information. You move through experiments without the old weight of shame. If something does not work, you are curious instead of crushed. That curiosity is not cleverness. It is compassion applied inward. You are willing to be imperfect while practicing truth. This willingness creates a field in which learning accelerates and wisdom matures. Another hallmark is clarity in relationship. Where you once sought validation, you now seek clarity. This shift is not cold detachment, it is honest intimacy. You speak more plainly because you no longer need to protect an image. You listen with less need to answer and more desire to understand. People who are ready to meet you in kind will deepen. Those who are not will show their true colors sooner, saving you wasted energy. Living from inner certainty invites healthier ties and kinder boundaries because your presence itself is the standard. Creativity changes under this influence. When you hold a steady inner chord, ideas move through you like wind through strings. There is less strain to produce and more willingness to follow what arises. Creative blocks are no longer personal failures, but small resistances to be acknowledged and returned to light. You do not force inspiration, you steward it. You create from abundance because the field you inhabit is generous, not scarce. This changes not only the quality of what you produce, but the experience of producing it. Financial life, often a battlefield for fear, also begins to respond differently. Inner certainty does not mean reckless spending or blind faith in luck. It means aligning your choices with a long view informed by trust. You budget from presence rather than panic. Invest in projects that feel right instead of chasing trends. And allow opportunities to find you because you are not running after every promise. Money becomes a resource, not the measure of your worth. You carry yourself with an ease that naturally attracts clearer exchanges. Health and body respond too. When stress is not your default, the nervous system recalibrates. You sleep more easily. Your digestion steadies. And movement becomes pleasure rather than punishment. The body is not a problem to be fixed, but a partner to be respected. You feed it with choices made from alignment, nourishment that feels good and work that does not erode you. In this way, your whole life becomes an expression of sustainable flow rather than frantic rescue. Perhaps most subtle and profound is how your sense of identity shifts. The inner certainty is not about becoming someone else. It is about revealing who you already are. The ego relaxes from the job of constant proving and can instead serve the deeper task of expression. You stop defending a story and start living a truth. In that freedom, humility arises naturally because you sense how much larger the picture is than any single personal victory. You are a note in a vast chord, and you begin to listen to the harmony rather than dominate the melody. You will not be perfect at this. Old reflexes will appear as if to test the new ground. Doubt may still knock on the door, but now you answer with recognition rather than panic. You thank it for the signal and then return to your center. Over time, these moments of recalibration grow shorter. The field of certainty becomes wider. You learn to meet life as a conversation, not a battle. You discover that ease is not laziness, but alignment, acting through intention. There is also a growing generosity in how you see others. Living from inner certainty softens judgment and increases compassion because you no longer need to prove your worth through comparison. You begin to assume the best in people, not because you are naive, but because you have seen the power of what an aligned mind can become. You no longer try to fix others, you offer presence. That presence is often the catalyst for someone else's transformation, more than any advice you could give. And finally, you notice how time itself feels different. The hurry that once pushed decisions evaporates. You find yourself more comfortable with pacing and timing because you have learned to trust the invisible currents that guide unfolding. You act when the current is felt and rest when it invites stillness. There is a rhythm to living that matches the stream rather than fighting against it. You are less a frantic architect and more a wise gardener, tending what wants to grow. You have become the river. As this way of living anchors, one last movement calls you not toward more doing, but toward deeper being. The final return is not to a higher skill, but to original simplicity, to the place where all flow coincides. That return is the stream of grace itself, and we will move there next. That return is the stream of grace itself, and we will move there next. As you settle into the rhythm you have been cultivating, you begin to sense that grace is not a reward for effort, but the natural movement of a mind that has unclenched. It is the quietly ordered intelligence that arrives when resistance relaxes and presence becomes primary. You have learned to witness doubt, to transmute it, to align thinking with heart. Now the invitation is to live from the stream that these practices have opened. Living from grace means allowing what is true to shape how you move, speak, and choose, without forcing an outcome or guarding against loss. In this return, gentleness becomes a form of power. You no longer need to push your way into existence. Instead, you allow existence to meet you where you stand. And when you do, the meeting is different. People feel it in your tone, in the steadiness of your attention, in the way your eyes hold theirs without seeking proof. Opportunities arrive with a different quality. They are not frantic or frantic-driven, but well-timed and often surprising. This is not coincidence. It is the correspondence of inner clarity with outer intelligence. You are not inventing miracles. You are clearing the channel so that what is already true can be perceived and embodied. Grace reshapes priorities. The ambitions that once felt urgent begin to soften into projects that serve a larger movement. The work you do is no longer an attempt to prove yourself, but an offering of skill and love. You find that the more you act from alignment, the less you must manage outcomes. Tasks are completed with a steadier hand. Conversations land with fewer misunderstandings. And choices that once felt draining now feel enlivening. The pressure to perform submits to a quieter question. What does this moment most require of you? When you answer from presence rather than impulse, your life moves with a kind of effortless precision. This does not mean you become passive. Far from it. Grace asks for engagement that is wholehearted and present. It asks for action that is surrendered to wisdom rather than reckless insistence. You cultivate discernment without anxiety and courage without bravado. There is a profound integrity in this posture because it arises from a place deeper than fear and smarter than strategy. The world responds to that integrity. People sense it and are drawn to it. Systems respond to it and sometimes rearrange themselves around it. The stream of grace is relational. It moves through the field of connection, not in isolation. There will be times when old reflexes creep in. You will feel the old tug toward control, the familiar nudge to secure, to test, to prove. When that happens, do not be harsh with yourself. Remember how you learned to witness thought without becoming it. Observe the reflex. Meet it with the same compassionate curiosity you have practiced, and allow it to rejoin the current it once resisted. Each time you return to grace, you strengthen the channel. Each time you enter the old fear with clarity, the field shifts a little more. This is how real change takes place. Not suddenly and forever, but incrementally and enduringly, through repeated acts of recognition and choice. Living from the stream of grace also transforms relationships. When you are steady, you lead by presence rather than persuasion. Your calm becomes permission for others to breathe. Conflicts lose their charge because you no longer respond with the old reactivity. Instead, you cultivate a space where truth can be spoken and heard without attack. People who have always short-circuited in your company begin to slow down. They test the waters of vulnerability and find you holding them. This kind of relational field is rare because it is built not from performance, but from an embodied truth that leaks out naturally. Creativity flourishes in this stream. The mind steadied by grace becomes a clearer instrument for imagination. Ideas arrive not as frantic demands, but as precise gifts. You learn to steward them rather than grasp for more. The work that emerges from this posture is often more original and more resonant because it is less buffered by fear and more saturated with truth. You notice that creative cycles lengthen in a healthy way. Inspiration comes, you tend it, it ripens, and it expresses. There is less burnout and more sustainable output. A life flowing in grace refines your relationship with success and failure. Success no longer inflates you. Failure no longer unseats you. Each outcome is valuable information, a kind of feedback from the field, and you read it without personal crisis. Your measure of worth is no longer tied to result, which frees you to take risks that matter. The stakes shift from preservation of image to fidelity to purpose. This kind of risk is creative and courageous because it is undertaken from a known center. The unknown is met not with grasping but with curiosity. Spiritually, the return to grace is the end of the long inner exile. The parts of you that were divided and defensive begin to taste reunion. The saboteur, once operating in shadows, now becomes an ally whose energy you can harness when needed. Old fears transform into sources of wisdom because their patterns have been understood and integrated. The psyche is not coerced into perfection, it is invited home. This is the heart of esoteric practice and the essence of New Thought realization. That the divine stream is not for some chosen few, but for anyone willing to clear their channel and live from inner truth. There is a humility that arises in this final stage. You know more now about how easily the mind can fracture perception. You also know how patiently presence can restore it. This humility is honest and kind. It does not seek applause or validation. It rests in the goodness of simple acts. A steady conversation, a careful decision, a generous silence. In those small things, the great stream of grace is honored. Presence becomes the practice. Presence becomes the discipline and the reward. As you carry this way of being forward, remember that the journey does not end with arrival. Grace is not a place you reach and then forget. It is a living current that requires attention, not effort. Devotion, not performance. You stay in the flow by returning to the witness whenever you are pulled, by tending belief with clarity, and by choosing alignment over reassurance. Every time you do, the stream deepens. Every time you let old doubt rise and then dissolve, your channel widens. In the simplicity of this life, the extraordinary becomes ordinary. You move through the world as an unforced presence that mends, clarifies, and awakens. The silent saboteur no longer rules from the shadows because it has been seen, understood, and transformed. What remains is the ease of what is true, the ease of being a clear vessel. You are not a fortress against life, you are a conduit of it. The divine flow that once felt blocked now moves, carrying you and those around you toward wholeness. And so the circle closes in a new way, not with finality but with steadiness. Over the course of this journey you met the quiet mechanics of doubt, learned to witness their movement, and practice the gentle art of inviting light to reclaim what it once guarded. What whispered resistance has been seen, understood, and transformed into fuel for clarity. The energy that used to contract your attention now becomes the power that steadies it. This is not magic. It is the ordinary alchemy of an honest mind. You will not shed old reflexes in a single moment. They will surface. Test the field you have cultivated and ask for recognition. When they appear, respond as you have learned to respond. Notice, name, and allow without agitation. Each time you meet a fearful reflex with presence, the pattern loses momentum. Presence is both method and proof. It is how the channel widens and how grace moves with less friction. This is your true work. Move from small choices into larger ones with the same inner standard. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love, learning to stand. Set boundaries that protect receptivity rather than punish others. Choose projects that ask for attention, not frantic rescue. As you do these practical things from a place of alignment, life rearranges itself to match that new clarity. Opportunities come with different timing and tone. Relationships shift toward honesty. Creativity arrives with steadier rhythm. Remember that true power is listening turned into action. Authority born of fear fractures. Authority born of presence heals. Keep the witness steady. Keep belief warm. And let surrender be intelligent. The stream of grace runs through you now. Live as the channel you were designed to be, and let your life stand as quiet evidence that what changes inside changes everything outside.